your time so empty?
No. Well, I run the office and tend the cabins and grounds and do little errands for my mother. The ones she allows I might be capable of doing.
Do you go out with friends?
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Another one of my personal favorites, gays in the horror genre is Anthony Perkins, who is best known for portraying Norman Bates in the classic film Psycho, as well as in 3 sequels, one of which he directed, Psycho 3. Okay. He's really has a lot to tell us, I feel like, about gay history, because, he was deeply in the closet. He was part of that sort of, 50s movie star machine where they would send gay stars out on, arranged publicity dates with various starlets. In real life, at the time, he was having an affair with Tab Hunter, who was another sort of matinee idol that was closeted.
He got to bang Tab Hunter.
Yep. So Tony ended up marrying a woman, Barry Berenson, a fashion photographer, and they had a couple of children together. Tony's story ended pretty tragically. Apart from being deeply in the closet, he was diagnosed with AIDS. He actually found out from a tabloid headline because some technician had sold his results to a tabloid, so that's how he found out that he had it. And so he passed away in, I believe it was 1990, not long after the final Psycho film, Psycho 4, the beginning. And then his wife was actually on one of the planes that crashed into the towers. I recently went to the footprints of the towers, and there's actually her name is inscribed along with all the other people who were on board that plane.
That's horrible.
Yeah, sad.
Or followed them in real life as well as.
Yeah. So, but speaking of his wife, she said that for a long time he really resented this sort of psycho typecasting, but at a certain point, she sort of said to him that if you sort of seem like you're shying away from it, it'll make people they'll sort of perceive you in a weird way. But once he started to really embrace it, it started to not bother him so much anymore. And he did return to the character with Psycho 2, which is one of the more intelligent and well-made sequels. Would seem like an impossible task in such a classic movie as Psycho. Reading in his biography, when he first heard Jerry Goldsmith's theme for the movie, he actually started to cry because he had waited for so long, he said, for someone to sympathetically kind of look at this character, who he really looked at as, kind of like a sad, trapped man. And so he was very gratified by the fact that, it took that view to him. Anthony's always just kind of held a special place in my heart, and I've read some analysis, and I find it interesting that Norman Bates you could kind of see as a coded gay character. I mean, he's sort of, he's a mama's boy, which was, a very stereotypical thing with gay men back in the day. And, he's very sensitive, he's misunderstood, he's sort of tortured. Sexuality is something that is very difficult for him to process in like a normal way. He's watching Marion through the peephole and whatnot, sort of shamefully and secretively. And something I never forgot is somebody said that scene where John Gavin, kind of restrains him when he's trying to stab Vera Miles at the end of Psycho, and he's in the wig and the dress and everything. And an interesting choice was made that he didn't actually scream on set, and they ended up not putting a scream over the soundtrack. So it's like this silent scream of like sort of the gay man being kind of held back and repressed by hetero society. I mean, maybe it's going a little overboard, but still, it's a powerful image, and I think it does kind of strike a psychological chord for a lot of gay men. So, for that and many other reasons, I just feel like Tony's really important to the horror genre, and especially to gay fans of horror.
And now, outside of Psycho, was there any other, was he ever in any other horror
Yeah,
films,
well,
or?
he, because he was so badly typecast by Psycho, he found it kind of hard to escape from Norman Shadow. He had been in all sorts of movies, and he'd actually been in a Broadway musical called Greenwell, which I have the recording of and really enjoyed. But, later in his career, he tended to do a lot of, villainous or psychotic roles that were never as subtle as Norman. but he appeared in a movie called Edge of Sanity that's kind of like a gloss on Jekyll and Hyde. He was in a very interesting film. It's a Ken Russell movie called Crimes of Passion, starring Kathleen Turner, where he plays this sort of like insane, evangelist who's obsessed with her character, who's a prostitute named China Blue. So, yeah, so he did some pretty memorable stuff. His biography, which I've read multiple times, Split Image, and I think if you're interested in Anthony Perkins and Psycho, or just in the history of gays in Hollywood, it's kind of a must read.
And what were some of the insights that they shared in this? It's a great cover picture too.
Yeah, he definitely, my feeling was that he emerges as somebody who, was flawed and maybe wasn't always the nicest person, but it's a very three-dimensional portrait of him as a human being. I feel like he gleaned a lot of understanding from it.
Just help me. Stu's flipped out. He's gone mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
Anthony Perkins, Psycho.
So one of my heroes growing up, and that really was part and parcel when I realized myself that I was gay with the fact that he was an openly gay man, is Kevin Williamson. He's the creator of Scream and Dawson's Creek, as well as the Vampire Diaries, which I just could not get into, but it has a lot of followers, and it's been a very successful ongoing series. But yeah, I just love Kevin. I mean, back in high school, actually, my entire closet door was just covered with pictures from all different Kevin Williamson shows. I got to meet him at a screening of Scream in New York City before I ever lived here, when I was still in high school.
Oh, wow.
And when I told him that I liked his much maligned film, Teaching Mrs. Tingle, starring Helen Mirren, he said, "God bless you," which of course, made me tremendously happy.
So he's witty and he's fun to be around when you met him?
He was a lot of fun on stage, and very engaging, and I know that, he's kind of been through, I've heard, some difficult things in his personal life. I think he struggled with addiction, because at one point he was just under a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, not only was he, trying to crank out this Scream franchise, but he also was, developing his new show Dawson's Creek, and he just did a lot of stuff, and I think he frankly burnt himself out a little bit. Hopefully kind of got a sabbatical, and now he's come back pretty strong with Vampire Diaries. He had a show that was pretty short-lived, but he developed a series called Stalker. And then in 2011, of course, he returned to the series that started to evolve with Scream 4, which I thought was just a tremendously well-written and smart ending to the franchise.
Oh, it
a lot of
totally
great things to
was.
say.
Right. Well, I also think even some of his minor movies, people kind of forget about. Like, I know that you're a big fan of Cursed.
Yes, another much maligned movie that I really enjoyed. I mean,
I
would love to see the footage that he shot with Skeet Ulrich that ended up on the cutting room floor. From what I gather, the movie was really kind of rushed in production before the script was fully ready, so it ended up being so overhauled that Skeet Ulrich just didn't want to do it anymore. He walked away from the project, and it was replaced by Joshua Jackson, who is quite good in it. I mean, it's such a likable guy, but it ends up being really sinister and evil in that movie.
Yeah, he seems like he's got his loyal cast followings as well, if he brought in Joshua Jackson.
Yeah, and of course, Michelle Williams got her start in Dawson's Creek and went on to become an Oscar-winning actress.
And it's so I have to say, another one is, I really like The Faculty. Do people remember that? It's our big pal Josh Hartnett, who is now on Penny Dreadful, or was on Penny Dreadful.
That's right, yep, and Elijah Wood, and that was sort of supposed to do for sci-fi what Scream did for horror. It didn't, quite get there, but it's...
Well, I thought it did.
Quite a following. It's a really
I loved
movie.
it, and I think, is her name Clea Duvall?
Clea Duvall's in it.
She was in Asylum, American Horror Story Asylum.
That's right.
As, Sarah Paulson's girlfriend, and I think she was in
sort of ironic because in The Faculty, her character is rumored to be a lesbian by the high schoolers.
And I know that she's contributed to other kind of, like, I think she was in the Laramie Project as well, which is another
I'm a cheerleader. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, she really did eke out a niche as well too. But I think what's it, Brewster? Jordana Brewster. She, of course, made it in the Fast and Furious films. I actually really liked her character a lot in that movie. I mean, even though she played such a horrible person. But I like.
She's a little bit like Buffy's Cordelia in that she starts off as like this mean girl and actually turns out to have some
I know,
softer
and
sides to her.
I like that. I kind of like that Elijah Wood got her in the end. He also, I think, didn't he write I Know What You Did Last Summer?
Certainly not the level of like the Scream movies, but you know, a very effective, entertaining, well acted, stylish movie. And I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's another one that's sort of you know, that's near and dear to Kevin's heart because he grew up in North Carolina. And I Know What We Did Last Summer, parts of it were shot in the same town where they shot Dawson's Creek, Wilmington, North Carolina. So, you know, he grew up, his father was a fisherman, which is why he ended up having this murderous fisherman be the stalker, and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Well, this one kind of...
And, you know, a lot of his upbringing kind of made its way into his work. I mean, he was obsessed with Steven Spielberg, like Dawson is obsessed with Steven Spielberg.
Oh.
He also was, you know, tremendously influenced by the original Halloween, which is what led him to basically create Scream, which is kind of like a giant homage to Halloween. And then he ended up doing, he was a producer, but did an uncredited, you know, rewrite on almost all of the screenplay for the Halloween H2O. And you totally get that Kevin Williamson vibe in that movie.
I did.
You've got these, you know, hyper-literate teens and all these great, you know, movie references to not just the previous Halloweens, but all sorts of different things, so.
I mean, I actually really appreciated H2O. I mean, there's the original, but I almost kind of think like H2O was probably my next favorite sequel after the original Halloween. So
yeah, did a great job of kind of paying homage to the original, and particularly to Jamie Lee Curtis, who you know, he always was so enamored of. So
I mean, he totally did us proud with it too. But you know, definitely, I know like for myself, Scream was totally influential for me. It's actually the movie that got me into horror. That and New Nightmare, those were probably, you know, when I was very young growing up, those were the two that I got exposed to the most. And I have to say, I still remember, you know, getting people to buy my ticket to Scream because I was too young to get into an R-rated movie. And
well, that's funny because Kevin Williamson talks about having to buy a movie to buy tickets to some other movie playing next door to Halloween, and then kind of slipping under the ropes to get into Halloween.
That's kind of.
He was also too young to see it.
I mean, it was such a great movie, and it's like, you know, he's another one that kind of, I think, like spread himself over. I mean, he mostly stuck with film, but it's just the fact that he had his hands in so many different franchises at the time. You know, as a real testament.
Now he's become, you know, very successful as a TV producer with Vampire Diaries.
Yeah.
So, you know, more power to him.
Yeah. Now, and you've never watched any of Vampire Diaries?
I started to watch the very beginning of it, and I just found that I just wasn't connecting with it. Certainly not in the way that I did with previous Kevin Williamson stuff. So, I kind of fell out of watching it. But you know, I will always. Kevin would just always mean a lot to me. I mean, he's the one who kind of inspired me to become a writer.
Yeah.
I remember when I did a play that was produced in high school, and somebody said that it was like Dawson's Creek writing. I knew that meant Kevin Williamson, and I took that as a huge compliment.
Yeah,
so,
and
very a real inspiration to me.
And I totally remember being a young kid too, and people were asking me like, well, who was some of your inspirations? And I definitely remember he was somebody that was right up there, you know. So it's kind of amazing to see that I'm glad that he's still around.
Yeah, me too.
You know, when he was such an inspiration to us growing up. So Kevin, we thank you.
Yeah.
Please give us more.
Really nailed the tone, because I was trying to create something new and different that we haven't seen before. I wanted it to sort of just be perverse and very sort of satirical, but very real, and he nailed it. I mean, I was watching the dailies the other day, and it was just incredible. It was just, it's amazing. I don't think we've seen a film like this in a long time. I mean, when was the last time you saw a really scary movie? And I think we got it.